On this edition of the program, Joe Biden's super gross pardon. Kirk Bato joins the show. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for December 4th, 2024. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you from Austin, Texas. This episode is going to be primarily focused on one thing, that is the pardon of Hunter Biden from Joe Biden. And here's all I have to say about it. Got the malarkey. The Hunter Biden pardon is shameful. And Joe Biden's word as a Biden is mud. Here's why. Hunter brought this all on himself. And Joe Biden protecting him has damaged his legacy. All of this can, and I believe should, get worse for both of them. So before we get into all of this, two things that I don't want to hear about in response to this argument. Here is the first and most common. Trump. Look, Donald Trump is his own conversation, and not everything related to any Democratic politician needs to be held in contrast. It's lazy at best and corrosive at worst. Furthermore, where you can actually relate it to Donald Trump, we will get to at the end. But just the but Trump, it's bad. It's bad for everybody. So let's at least give Joe and Hunter what they deserve, which is an airing of the facts that solely relates to them. 2, addiction. I don't often play this card, but I am the son of an alcoholic. I was raised by a problem gambler, both multiple times. Went to 12-step programs for their issues. And while I very much love to have conversations with people that understand addiction is a multifaceted problem that deserves sophisticated empathy, it is not an enchantment shielding you from consequences to your actions. Quite the opposite, actually. The 12-step program is designed to rebuild your sense of responsibility. It does this by understanding and repairing the damage that you have caused while you were afflicted. So hand-waving things away because Hunter Biden is a drug addict is not only, to me, a non-starter, but also infantilizing and damaging to the concept of people that are in recovery. And truly taking the hard look at their lives and the productive steps that they need to take to make themselves better members of society, not only to themselves, but also to their family who love and would love to depend on them. This pardon not only reveals the 46th president of the United States to be a craven cardboard cutout of a man of decency, it expands the bounds of presidential pardons in a uniquely selfish direction under the sickening guise of loyalty to family. So let's walk through a timeline of the two charges that were most famously facing Hunter. It all, of course, starts with Hunter Biden leaving a laptop at a computer repair shop where he forgets it. The shop owner realizes who owns it, turns it over to the FBI, and it's only after nothing is done about it, and Joe Biden is in his campaign for president saying things that the shop owner, in his mind, knows is untrue, does he leak the laptop to the press and to partisan actors, including Rudy Giuliani. What does Joe Biden do? Well, his campaign denies any fault, deflects blame, and hides behind Hunter's addiction. 51 intelligence experts sign a letter saying it's Russian disinformation. Biden repeats this during a debate, and social media companies, including Twitter and Facebook, are pressured to delist links to coverage of that story. And of course, the laptop is proven to be real. So In 2020, Hunter announces that he is being investigated for tax fraud and that he has been under investigation since 2018. In 2023, a plea deal is announced. He's going to agree to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges for failing to pay federal income tax and enters a pre-trial diversion program for a felony gun charge related to the illegal possession of a gun while being a drug addict. The deal is expected to allow him to avoid jail time pending court approval. 2 days after this plea deal is announced, 2 IRS whistleblowers, including one that had come forward earlier, testified before the House Oversight Committee detailing alleged misconduct and undue interference in their investigation into Hunter Biden's taxes. They assert that their efforts to pursue charges were stymied by higher-ups within the Justice Department. So with public pressure on the deal, you'd think that Hunter would take whatever he could take to make this go away, right? Wrong. During the court hearing, which is supposed to make the plea deal final, the U.S. District Judge presiding raises concerns about the terms of the plea agreement, particularly the scope of immunity that it would grant Hunter. Due to these ambiguities, the judge declines to accept the deal, leading Hunter Biden to plead not guilty to the charges, meaning that he will face trial for them. But it is important to note specifically what the judge was objecting to. She believed the plea deal would exempt Hunter from facing charges going forward. Quote, "The United States agrees to not criminally prosecute Biden outside of the terms of this agreement for any federal crimes encompassed." The agreement also required the judge to be the arbiter that Hunter was staying on the straight and narrow because they weren't sure that if Trump won the election that the Justice Department would be fair. The plea deal falls apart. Hunter does face trials for both his gun charge and the tax fraud. This is where I'm going to have an editorial note. I'm sympathetic to the argument that very few people get charged with the gun crime that Hunter got charged with, which is lying on a form that he wasn't an addict when he bought a gun. And this right here is where some defenders of the Biden family say that overzealous partisan prosecutors took liberties. And this, dear listener, dear viewer, are simply incorrect. Hunter didn't catch this charge for being a Biden. He caught this charge because being a Biden allowed him to get paid to write a book about being an addict, removing any question on if he knew he was an addict at a time that he bought the gun. It is in his 2021 memoir, Beautiful Things, that Hunter candidly discusses his struggles with substance abuse, particularly his addiction to crack cocaine. He recounts episodes of compulsive drug use, using the following phrase, quote, "I used my superpower, finding crack anytime, anywhere." This admission aligns with the period in October 2018 when he purchased a firearm. During that purchase, he completed the ATF Form 4473, where he denied being an unlawful user of or addicted to any controlled substances. He lied. And then he got paid to tell a story where he laid out his own lie. It was Hunter who left the laptop. It was Hunter who bought the gun. It was Hunter who wrote a book about being an addict. Hunter who botched his sweetheart plea deal by shooting the moon for immunity on future crimes, despite there being public pressure on the investigation. And eventually, on that gun charge, Hunter gets convicted. And it's a nasty trial, including witness testimony of his brother's widow saying that she got him addicted to crack after they entered into a romantic relationship, breaking up Hunter's then family. There is a sinister force after Hunter Biden, and it looks him in the eyes in the mirror every day. Eventually, Hunter reaches another plea deal and agrees to plead guilty in his tax trial. He faced sentencing on both convictions within months of this moment. That was before the pardon came down on Sunday night. And I'll be honest, guys, after everything I've laid out, if President Biden commuted just those sentences, even after swearing that he wouldn't, it would be a story on the right, but it would pass. Because, I mean, in all likelihood, what are we talking about? Him avoiding probation, maybe a few months in jail. It might be gross, and I would argue harmful to a recovering addict who should understand the consequences of his actions. But, oh well. Fathers and sons, cats in the cradle and the silver spoon and all that. But that's not what Joe Biden did. Joe Biden gave his son a blanket pardon for any and all crimes committed from 2014 to 2024. That stretches 11 years. It stretches far beyond his tax crimes. It stretches far beyond the gun charge. It Streisand-esque begins Hunter's immunity right before he joins the board of Burisma, the focal point of the long-standing charges of influence peddling by the Biden family, what has been looked at by Congress for the last several years. This is a broader pardon than President Ford offered to President Nixon in an attempt to allow the country to move on from Watergate. And who benefits from it? Not the country. Hunter. And maybe Joe. The argument from the White House would go something like this. And this is something that Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters when they were finally allowed to talk to her. The incoming Justice Department will be weaponized and will drag the Biden family through the mud on exaggerated charges that have already been publicly litigated. To which I say to Joe Biden, well, if you want that second term of president, that just proved to be rocket fuel for Donald Trump. Turned him in from a pariah to heading back to the White House. So, maybe you should think twice about this. You should have let it go. In all seriousness, all this does is rightly bring more suspicion on the Biden influence peddling. It comes at the expense of Biden's word. It leaves a legacy that presidents should personally benefit from pardons based on their estimation of future Justice Departments. Now, pardons have long been very, very, very grody. They often veer into pay for play, get out of jail free cards for donors. But even then, there have been some ground rules. Usually, if you're getting somebody out of a jail sentence, they usually have served at least part of it. Rapper Kodak Black was sentenced to 46 months in prison for lying on a federal form when buying a gun, and Trump pardoned him as he was leaving office in 2021 after Black had only served about a year of it. But he had served time. A name that you might hear in conversation about this pardon is Charles Kushner. He is the father-in-law to Trump's daughter, Ivanka. Now, Kushner had been tried, convicted, and served time for his 2005 charge. He was pardoned to remove it from his record. Are these executive overreach? Depends on how you see The Office. But neither of those two set new precedent, nor do they personally benefit Donald Trump, unless you're saying that it'll make Charles Kushner happier at Thanksgiving. What Joe Biden just did is more. What Joe Biden just did is worse. Not hypothetically, not reportedly. He did it. Hunter has never paid a price. And I personally hope that Joe Biden's legacy pays it for him. This is your update brought to you by politics.com. It's where you support this show. I'm recording this on Giving Tuesday. I didn't realize that a lot of people do big pitches for their Substacks and stuff like that on Giving Tuesday, because I don't think of myself as a charity. I think of myself as somebody that gives you guys value for your dollar. Okay? If you head on over to takepoliticsseriously.com, politics.com, find me on Substack, wherever you want to do it, and you sign up, $3 a week, if you buy me a cup of coffee, you get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. And that's rain, sleet, snow, holidays, doesn't matter. Each week, 2 bonus episodes. That's it, and that's all. And sometimes, it's good stuff. I had to go back and re-record an immediate reaction to the Hunter Biden pardon for the Sunday episode. That was pretty much the bulk of where we discussed Kash Patel's appointment to the FBI, because all that happened over the weekend. So the Sunday episode gets it. Now we have a deeper dive, obviously, as you guys just heard in the monologue up top, and we're going to talk more with Kirk Bato as we get to the other side of this. But it's worthwhile. And if you want to save money on that, it's like, look, Justin, I get it. I would buy you a cup of coffee each week to get those 2 bonus episodes. But can I get it cheaper? You can. If you buy it for the year, it's like 60 cents an episode. If you include all the episodes that you get for the year. It's $99. 100, over 100, people pointed this out, over 150 episodes for less than $100. And by the way, you can gift those subscriptions to your friends and family. I'm sure a lot of y'all talk to your friends about your family, about politics over Thanksgiving, and there were some of y'all that were just crestfallen. I could never see this happen. You guys weren't surprised. Y'all knew what was happening because of this show. Politics.com. Again, that is the place that you go if you want to support this program, get the bonus episodes. But now your update. Some things we didn't have a chance to get to in this very Hunter-centric episode of the program. And this is a doozy, man. South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol declared martial law, citing the need to protect the nation from anti-state forces, accusing the opposition-controlled National Assembly of sympathizing with North Korea. This unprecedented move led to the deployment of military forces, including troops and helicopters, around the National Assembly building in Seoul, resulting in clashes between soldiers and protesters. And this was no joke, man. It's been rolling across social media all day today. It is wild. The declaration faced immediate and widespread opposition, not only in Korea, but around the world. Members of the ruling People Power Party and the opposition Democratic Party condemned the action. In an emergency session convened in the early hours of December 4th, the National Assembly voted unanimously, 190 of the 300 members present, to annul the martial law declaration. Following the legislative action, President Yoon announced he would lift martial law and ordered the withdrawal of military personnel from the National Assembly premise, which our friend Tom Merritt pointed out to us when I was texting him about this, includes one of the members of BTS who is currently doing his mandatory service in the Korean military. International reactions included expressions of concern with the United States urging a peaceful resolution in accordance with democratic principles. Domestically, the situation led to significant public unrest and thousands gathering to protest the imposition of martial law to defend these democratic institutions. This is the first time that martial law has been declared in South Korea since the 80s, which they've only been a democracy for a certain period of time, highlighting the fragility of the nation's democratic process amid political tensions. The swift response by the National Assembly and public underscores the reliance on South Koreans' commitment to democracy. I'm not going to pretend like I understand the underlying headwinds here. I do know that the current president, who seems like he might have done a soft attempted coup, he is not the cuddliest man. He is more conservative than previous South Korean presidents. But as we've covered in the past, old heads will know that we've been fascinated by some of the scandals involving the South Korean government, which involves Samsung, ponies, an old huckster who said they were able to talk to dead people. South Korean scandals are pretty lit, but this obviously is something a little bit more pressing. More details to come. Let's swing back to the U.S. here. Incoming Senate Majority Leader John Thune plans 2 major partisan bills that will be done via reconciliation, and he wants them both done within the first 30 days. It's going to start with a reconciliation package on border security, defense, and energy. That will be the more controversial one, but they believe they're going to be able to get it over the hump with 43 votes in the Senate. Obviously, the House is going to have its own tight margin. But the second package would focus on taxes and Trump's broader priorities. The Republicans believe that because the Democrats got a little fast and loose with reconciliation during the last 4 years, where they said, well, we could do 2 reconciliation packages. Not just one. It was traditionally one. But now we're going to do 2. Now the Republicans are like, well, that's the rule. That's the rule now. So we're going to do 2. We're going to do a more controversial one. Then we're going to do a Trump tax cuts one. I also wonder whether or not Thune is trying to lead here because he knows there's going to have to be a little shuffling in the House. You got 2 members of the incoming Trump administration that are going to have to do the hokey pokey when it comes to getting out of the House and having a special election fill those slots. So he needs to play ball with Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson needs to throw these bills as fast as humanly possible into the Senate. Thankfully, there's no Matt Gaetz here, so he probably will not have a hard time getting confirmed as leader like last time. But there we go. The Republicans are at least making noises that they are trying to be streamlined going into Trump's first 100 days, which in a lame duck term does mean more. We're talking about the waning moments of Donald Trump having future power. Every day from the day he's inaugurated until those first 100 days are crucial, which is why a lot of people were scratching their heads that he was taking so many people out of the House. Because it's like, dog, you're going to need those. Finally, Representative Jared Moskowitz became the first Democrat to join the Congressional Delivering Outstanding Government Efficiency Caucus, DOGE for short, a bipartisan group supporting government streamlining and spending cuts. It is led by Representatives Aaron Bean, Pete Sessions, and Joni Ernst, all Republicans. Of course, the caucus aligns with the President-elect Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, headed by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Moskowitz, though, who represents South Florida, stretching up into Broward County, he actually would have been, if I still lived at the house that I lived in Tamarack, he would be my representative. He represents where I used to live. Moskowitz proposes reforms to the Department of Homeland Security and advocates for both FEMA and Secret Service to report directly to the White House and to be broken out of HHS. It seems as if Doge has gained momentum on Capitol Hill, with Musk and Ramaswamy set to address GOP lawmakers soon. You know, I want to be optimistic about the idea that there can be commonplace reforms made to government bureaucracy, because I don't think that anyone in America, including Democratic politicians, believe that the entire bureaucracy is something that you want to see exist forever. I think everybody believes it's bloated. The question is where you make the cuts, and that's where I think a lot of this bipartisan good time sing-along is probably going to come to an end. But that's your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. This makes a great stocking stuffer, by the way. A great stocking stuffer. In fact, I'll put it this way. If anybody wants to buy a gift subscription for a friend, relative, loved one, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, if you buy them a gift subscription for the year, I will make a custom video that you can send along to them, thanking both you and them. A custom little cameo style video for anybody who buys a gift subscription between now and the end of the year. Because Hanukkah stretches into the next year. So from now until the end of Hanukkah, I will make a custom video for you guys. Politics.com, where you need to go. And now, Mr. Kirk Bato. Joining me to talk more about this is Kirk Bato, the Hotline editor. How you doing, man?
Justin, it's coming in fresh off Thanksgiving here, and definitely a really newsy way to end the Thanksgiving weekend. You know, we had our Pittsburgh Steelers coming up big against the Bengals. You know, if I would have told you 5 months ago that we were going to be part of the highest scoring game in the NFL this season, I don't think either of us would have believed it. And then to top it off, we had a Hunter Biden pardon last night, interrupted, as you said, football night in America. It is a huge day for us nerds.
Which, I mean, and this is something that I feel like people do need to have explained to them. Number one, NBC pays a ridiculous amount of money for football. This is something that they view as a loss leader because they're able to promote other things on NBC when football is on. For the news department to break into anything is probably a discussion. For them to break into football programming is
the moneymaker.
Yeah, like the reason why I ran to the television instinctively was because I'm like, if they're breaking into football, someone's died. There's like this is a big deal, and so they ran with that, which also says to me that they don't care about any phone call coming in from Delaware at all whatsoever. They are done caring about that area code. They are on to the next. They care about phone calls from Palm Beach now. They don't care at all about Delaware, because breaking into football for something like that is something that I feel like would have got them yelled at 6 months ago, but now that's how fast power moves on in Washington, I guess.
Well, it's a real statement on how much of a lame duck Biden is right now. And I saw your tweet last night about this, and I got to thinking of what are the other big events in the last year or so that would have interrupted a big sporting event like that. And there was one that I had forgotten until I literally Googled this last night. It was the Kate Middleton announcement that she had cancer cut into the NCAA basketball tournament, which I thought at the time was an interesting conversation to have about the news priorities here. But obviously this Hunter Biden one, to your point, it's not about necessarily the news value of it. It is the news value of it, but more of a comment on how they're not afraid of the White House right now. They're not afraid of a call from Wilmington here. This is something that they wanted to get in to the biggest audience possible.
They possibly
as soon as possible.
I think also the other journalistic element of it is that they broke the story, so I think they wanted to make sure that
they wanted to
knew
own
that
it.
They broke the story, and so they're like, "Screw it! I don't care." Cut into Maria Taylor breaking down the Bengals defense getting shredded by Russell Wilson. We're just gonna run with this.
Well, what we really needed was Chris Collinsworth and Michael really sounding off on it during the broadcast too. In between the snow takes and everything.
Michael, when you're talking about a pardon.
My God, Mike, look at this. It's just sweeping pardon here. We haven't seen this in ages, since Montana. My God.
I know. Well, now it's, just my shameless ripping off of the Bill Simmons format is complete.
The fact that I got to do this, I was listening to the Bill Simmons on my way into the office here, so this is full circle for me right
exactly.
now.
No, this is the one true destiny of the program. The longer I've sat with this, the grosser I felt about it. And up top, I've shredded Biden, and I wonder whether or not, from your perspective, you think that this is a story that will continue to grow, or do you think that we are at the apex of the story now as it is fresh?
I think we're at the apex of it. If we're continuing this Bill Simmons metaphor, this is the apex mountain of the Hunter Biden pardon story. Because I was thinking about it this morning, because I was thinking about how to start our newsletter today, and I was thinking about how we could do another spin on it besides this has happened and people are upset about it. And I looked at it more as a look at how the folks' trust in institutions are going to continue to be erode because of this as well. Yeah. And then I started thinking more toward the future, what are some things that are coming up that could restore faith in the federal government? I looked at some studies that Pew had done that looked at how the Supreme Court, Congress, and the presidency are at some of their historic low of confidence from voters. And I got to thinking of what's coming up in all three of those that could maybe restore any sort of confidence or faith in them. And if you look at it like this, we're going to have contentious confirmation hearings that are just going to completely overshadow the first 100 days of the new administration. Then you have potentially a funding fight in March if they end up kicking the can down the road here. If they extend it past the December 20th deadline, no one wins in a standoff like that.
No.
Then you have just the unpredictability of whatever Trump's going to be doing here over the next 100 days, over the next 4 years even. And I do think that this is going to get a lot of play this week. It's going to get a lot of play today and tomorrow with lawmakers coming back into Washington. Because we're going to
get first quotes from everybody. And so far, it has been, pretty kind of 50-50. You've seen Democrats that don't normally speak out against Joe Biden speaking out against the pardon.
Right. And I'm not trying to say that Biden's doing some sort of 4D chess here. He obviously wanted to get this out before the sentencing came through later this month here. Yeah. But it is giving Democrats an opportunity to really break from Biden now and kind of stand on what the principles of the party says they are. But I do think that after this calms down and after we start chasing the next shiny Trump object that's going to be in front of us, after we start having these fights over the funding, over the NDAA, over the next controversial cabinet pit that Trump has, that this is going to be forgotten. But I do think that this is going to be kind of a big footnote on Biden's legacy, right after refusing to drop out earlier.
Then dropping out.
then delaying that and putting the party in a bad position, that this is going to be a big footnote on his legacy here.
The counterfactual to that would be this. The only question in the Democratic Party from now until the midterms and then obviously until the next presidential is who is the new Democratic Party? Right. And whenever you have a question that broad for a bunch of people that are this self-centered, the answer to all of them is me. And the answer that the fastest way that you can get away from that is I'm not him. And I think that there is going to be a big distancing themselves. And if you want to distance yourself, This is a huge way to do it. You know, I wrote back in June, this was during Biden watch. I wrote back in June that either the Democrats could vilify Biden now or they can vilify him later. But they're eventually going to have to, because you're not able to defend something that was obviously what the people didn't like. Right. And that's what we were seeing at that point during Biden watch. And now I think Biden's just a big fat piñata there with political points for Democrats to take. All they have to do is hit him as hard as they can. And I think they're going to. I think that we're probably going to see some people. I mean, we've seen middle of the road politicians. We've seen Jared Polis. We've seen a few.
I was going to say Jared Polis is probably like the typical one that I'm thinking of as the guy who maybe has his sights set on 2028, taking just a meat cleaver right now and separating himself from Biden as best he can and trying to get out ahead of the pack here.
I mean, and he's taken. No, this is part of a few steps for him. He also praised RFK Jr. because he realizes where all the crunchy people in America live. But you see Michael Bennett come out and take to it. I wonder whether or not there's going to be somebody with a bold-faced name that's going to have something really pointed for him. And I would suspect that probably happens within the next, 24 to 48 to 72 hours. And if that's the case, then now the conversation becomes about the backlash and not just the moment itself. Because I agree with you. As soon as we get to hearings, as soon as we get to questions, then we're going to be back to talking about Pete Hegseth's divorce. But right now, this is it.
Who do you think, if you were to do a draft of those bold-faced names in the Democratic Party?
Barry Simmons, yeah.
Yeah. Give me like the 7 or 13 or so people that you would think who would come out with the strongest statement against it right now. Because I do think that Jared Polis is the biggest name right now who has come out criticizing it. But I'm trying to think who else would be who would fall into that lane here and try to take a whack at the Biden piñata.
The ones that would matter the most are the ones who have known him the longest, right?
Yeah, so Chris Murphy came out with a statement that he said something to the effect of he understands it as a father, but not as the commander-in-chief. And I thought that was the most...
That's about as strident as you're going to get out of somebody that probably doesn't button his pants unless Joe Biden says it's okay.
I was about to say, give me the vapors here. I'm just shocked by this at all. I'm clutching my pearls at the heat of that statement.
I would imagine that it's a lot of the people that have names that are going to run for president. And, you heard rumors of like AOC. That AOC is, probably got donors lined up thinking about, okay, well, if I'm going to run for president in 4 years, what does that look like for me? What position should I take to get to that position? Her whole thing is being a firebrand. If she does... a big thing about how rule of law is rule of law. You either believe in it or you don't. You don't get to make exceptions. Then that's one thing. And this is where, in my mind, I hope that there is more eyes on some of the influence peddling stuff. But just because it's like a 10-year blanket pardon.
That's the second part of this is...
Like, what are we doing? Like, it's not just the gun charge. It's not the tax charge. It's not that. To be totally honest, look, people on the right would be upset about it if he did that. They would. But whatever. Save it for Rumble. Like, it'll live there, and then it would go away. Because really, what we'd be talking about, maybe 2 months in prison, maybe probation for a year. Like, that's the difference between those two realities. 10 years. Like that's got
blanket pardon,
like Streisand effect stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing that if one of the ways I could have seen this story continue further, the more I think about your question is if the Trump Justice Department comes in and wanted to maybe relitigate other parts of this story that we might not know about, but because the pardon is so sweeping and covers anything that he may or may not have committed in the last 11 years. Then we are going to criticize it now. We are going to dig in deep, and I think what you're seeing from the chattering class, Jonathan Chait over at The Atlantic took a blowtorch to it last night. I think that's going to flame up right now, but eventually burn out. But the only reason I could have seen this maybe continuing is if the Trump Justice Department started getting involved in a few months and started really looking into their allegations of the Biden crime family. But this pardon is so sweeping, it almost Trump-proofs it. It makes it much more difficult. I could maybe see this coming up a lot more come 2028, where, to your point, where Democrats are trying to carve out a lane of how they are not like the other guy, that we relitigate this a lot in the run-up to Iowa and New Hampshire.
But if you're going to do it then, you have to do it now.
Right, you got to lay the groundwork now.
Yeah, you can't say I was against the war in Iraq when it's really popular. You have to be Barbara Lee and say I voted against it at the time. Either you put your flag at the 50-yard line, which started a million fights over the college football weekend, or you don't. And that's where I do think that there's, if you're a Democratic politician on the make, why not? What is Joe Biden like? And this, I would say this to everybody else too. You torch him. This is torch worthy. Like Jonathan Chait, for folks who don't follow, this sphere of like media world, like this is something that matters in these circles. Like Jonathan Chait is a reliable defender of Democratic establishment. Like he is somebody that has his deviations, but by and large, he is a reliable voice to say, yes, and blue is right, and here are a bunch of SAT words that prove it. For him to like day of, get his pen all hot and fire off a hour and a half turnaround shredding, that says something. It says that there is not a lot of institutional love for Joe Biden right now. Not only from Chait, Polis, Nate Silver was like just on one like that.
Oh my
dude,
God,
that dude was just AK-47.
He was calling him a senile old man on Twitter last night. He was just incredibly frustrated with it. I don't see someone like Andy Beshear calling Biden a senile old man, but I'm going to be very curious to see, especially how the governors who are positioning themselves for 2028 react to this, because a lot of them have the same type of pardon power in their state. So how do they answer this question now? Because it becomes an even bigger question of, we've had this experience, we've had this power given to us. Would we do this for one of our kids? And that's unlike a senator or something like that. You could ask them that question to see how they would be in this scenario.
And the same Andy Beshear that was doing interviews on Iowa television 48 hours after the election. You think he might? You think he might be furnishing up the resume?
All I'm saying is that we're looking for big, bold names to break here.
Absolutely.
The most dangerous place in Kentucky sometimes can be between Andy Beshear and a camera. So I'm keeping an eye out on that.
Who else is on that list? This is great because it doubles as our 2024
I think Shapiro
nomination list. Shapiro's an interesting
Josh Shapiro,
one.
absolutely.
Yeah. Somebody needs to get Shapiro on the horn.
Especially because Biden's just basically Pennsylvania's third senator here. I can imagine he tries to split the uprights like Chris Murphy does. But again, he's had that pardon power before. So I'm really curious to see what he has.
Well, and also he was just, I guess I don't know where Shapiro lays the blame or possibly the credit for not getting picked as vice president at this point, but he might not be in love with some of the people around Joe Biden right now. Anyway.
No, again,
I'll be curious. Fetterman's another one where it's like he may or may not have somebody.
That's a good one.
Who has White House ambitions, but he's certainly he trades on his authenticity.
And he's been a big Biden defender in the past. He was one of those people giving a big FU to people calling for Biden to drop out, even as late as after the debate. So I'll be curious to see how he reacts to this now when someone gets him in the hallway here in Washington. I am really curious to see, too, you mentioned how Biden doesn't have a whole lot of political utility right now, and that makes him the perfect piñata for people to go take whacks at. I'm also curious about if it's the reaction to the Pod Save America interview is any indication, the senior staff around Biden as well, because that might be one of the reasons why folks might want to couch back their language. They don't want to upset the folks in the highest ranking of the political stratosphere of the Democratic Party. But look, if you're ever going to take a blowtorch to something, you got to bury it right now, because it seems like their stock is at the absolute lowest right now, especially after that interview.
Oh my God. I was gonna do this whole episode. I was just gonna do. I'll do it Friday now, but I was gonna do my like point by point of just picking apart that interview.
I'm sorry to get ahead of your programming here.
What were your? But it was the Hunter thing. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought it was as a journalist.
Yeah.
I like that they did this interview. Would I have liked them to do this interview with the folks who do the interview podcast with the New York Times, or someone who maybe would be a little bit more adversarial, which the bar is incredibly low on that? Yes, but I am happy that this document exists.
Yeah, they would not have done it with anybody other than a friend.
Well, and it really kind of epitomizes the Harris approach here, where she got more in trouble with what she said in friendlier interviews than she did in adversarial interviews. And I think you saw the same thing play out with this. You and I could sit here for the rest of the hour if we wanted to and go bit by bit. I mean, I think I lost track at how many times they said we only had 107 days.
107-day campaign. 107-day campaign.
Here, wait, before I answer you, we had 107 days, Justin. Now, Justin, before I get into this Nets part, we had only had 107 days.
Just know that 107 days, you don't come up with that on accident. It's something that has been said a lot.
If you wanted to make a drinking game where if you took a drink every time they mentioned 107 days, you'd be on the floor before they got to their first MeUndies ad here. It was ridiculous. I do think, though, that it was very telling where they were starting to talk about how they didn't have they decided not to punch back at some of the Trump stuff because they wanted to spend their resources a smarter, more effective way. You have $1.5 billion. That's not an excuse here. It's not a resource allocation issue. That's a conscious bad decision you made. I did think the most, besides all the headline stuff about the excuse making, the equivalencies, was them complaining about the PAC industrial complex on the Democratic side. I thought that was the most interesting part. Yeah. How they're just throwing dirt on folks at Future Forward.
That was it. They were the big. Yeah, go ahead, finish up.
No, they were throwing dirt on that. They also alleged that Trump is illegally coordinating with the PACs, which I thought was incredibly interesting and something that I want to follow up on the other side of that. But just criticizing this whole larger structure around the Democratic Party here with all their outside money. I mean, look, you and I both know that Democrats have outraised Republicans at every level of the ballot.
Yep.
They spend more money. They raise more money. They have more donors. And for them to turn around and say, we don't have enough.
This was a money issue.
This was a money issue. What are we doing here? Like, I just that disconnect. I was literally in a plane and I had to pause it because I was taking notes. I was just like, what the hell are we talking about here? Like, look at your FEC reports here. I just don't understand that. That part frustrated me as a reporter who cares a lot about finance reporting. And I'm not, again, I don't have skin in the Democratic Super PAC game, but if I'm hearing that as like the president of Future Forward or even a place like American Bridge or something like that, I'm like, well, what do you want me to do here? What do you want me to do here?
Well, the answer from the Harris team is die. I want you to die. Somebody's going to have to die. We are all at tribunal of Survivor for do we get a job next cycle island. And I would like for you guys to be eliminated so I will survive. That's the only reason why they do this interview. The only reason why they do it is because they want to get ahead of any message to say it was not us, it was Future Forward. We're not going to say Future Forward. We're going to say that it was the lawyers. We're going to say that our PACs aren't communicating and blah, blah, blah. But what we really want to say is that $1.5 billion went to those egghead morons at Future Forward who came up with a bunch of really dumb ads that we didn't think moved the ball forward. Now, they'd have a little bit more credibility to say that if any of their ads made any kind of difference at all whatsoever. Correct. And for the 107-day campaign, maybe you should think boldly. Maybe you should think about, well, we knew we only had 107 days, so we had our candidate. We pitched her walking down in her underwear Fifth Avenue so she could prove how transparent she was. Like, that's what you need to do. Not min-maxing little, well, we thought if maybe we could go on Hot Ones, but then we wanted to make sure that we did.
Oh, and they didn't want to talk politics. They didn't want to talk politics. Like, what are we doing here? Like, You're now blaming these podcasts and shows for not being able to communicate your message.
For not being fully at your disposal. Fully at your disposal.
You had $1.5 billion, and you're playing prevent defense right now. You're playing not to lose the game. You're trying to run out the clock in your 107-day campaign.
Well, if you see that we did do Club Shay Shay, it's like you did Club Shay Shay, which in another world you could say is to black men what Joe Rogan is to the rest of the podcasting universe, which is largely white men. Mm-hmm. You didn't do a Cat Williams 3 hours where you just told every story you possibly could.
Right.
You did 30 minutes where you made Shannon Sharp read a bunch of pre-scripted questions like he was a plant at a town hall meeting. So, Madam Vice President, what do you think about corn subsidies? I'm glad you asked that, Shannon. Mm-hmm. Let me go ahead and you weren't sipping Cavassier. You weren't the point of that show. God. The biggest stuff that I saw from that, spoiler alert for the next episode where I break it down, it was all the dogs that didn't bark. What did you not hear? You didn't really hear a whole lot of talk about Joe Biden, which means that that's who they're going to blame when they give the blind quotes to the books that will define the election. Mm-hmm. And they didn't really talk a lot about Kamala. And I think that's when you start reading the blind quotes about this, there's going to be a lot of dirt on, hey, Kamala sucked. Turns out we had a lame horse. Don't blame the professionals. The professionals, because there was a lot of talk about she started with a really, really low or a high disapproval. We were able to bounce. We batted that back. We got her to be net positive. We did that.
And we got the race close. We got the race close.
We got the race close. But I think that's going to be what they eventually say more plainly off the record, is that Biden crippled us and Kamala didn't want to move for the ability that we had to move. That we begged her, we pleaded with her to break with Biden. She wouldn't do it. She was lazy. She had whatever. I mean, like her staffs have always leaked, so these campaign books are going to be lit. But it's going to be, I don't know. I think she's going to get into the bucket on all this.
We did get into a little on that pod about how it was her decision to not necessarily throw the dirt on Biden in here. Mm-hmm. But to your point, Kamala's 2020 campaign leaked like a shiv. So I'm really surprised that we haven't had a big, now they tell us story about Harris herself. Instead, it has been a lot of blind quotes about the folks who were on that Pod Save America interview. Yeah. It was about the mismanagement of the money and the excessive spending. But we haven't had anyone within that campaign really throw the dirt on Kamala yet. There have been a lot of folks with knives out for Biden, don't get me wrong here.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen Harris hold the blame, or any of the Harris inner circle hold the blame that are outside the campaign apparatus in the same way that we had 4 years ago. Well, at least not yet.
I think part of it is that campaign retained the structure of the Biden campaign, and the structure of the Biden campaign, and I would recommend for anybody who, I've recommended these books in the past, but John Allen and Amy Parnes' books, Shattered and Lucky, they're writing one about this cycle as well. But in Lucky, where they talk a lot about Biden's campaign, the way that they describe the structure is like, there's Biden, then there's his family, that's the tightest center, then there's the people that he's known for 30 years, and then and only then do you get to campaign apparatus, right? And I think what happened was you dislodge Biden, but it's not like Kamala came in with people that have worked with her forever. So she probably retained a lot of that same structure. There was a lot of people that she kept around her, and then there was this machinery that had kind of been working autonomously outside of Biden's influence already. So they just kind of kept going. They just had new names to print on stuff like that. And obviously there was no oversight into the spending because clearly, Jesus, that was what it was. So, oh boy, I don't think that we will see the nasty stuff until we get into the books, because that's where you build the sources for a long time, and people will be more willing, because also they know that those books are what, if you run a bad campaign, you can point to say, yeah, but that's not what really happened. Look at this. This is what really happened. The real problem was this other person. And oh my God, the finger pointing this cycle is going to be insane.
No, it's already been insane in the last month or so since the election. And I am looking forward to reading the Now They Tell Us books here, especially because it does seem like Harris has floated above the criticism right now, that she has not been a character in her own campaign the way that you see other failed candidates when their campaigns don't live up to expectations. And to your point, you did not hear them talk about the principle hardly at all in the interview that was supposed to be about what went wrong here. So I'm very curious to see how it shakes out.
But they also didn't say a lot of complimentary things either. And
they did not.
Is that usually you do hear them say, you want to know what? Every day we woke up, and as soon as we looked at the vice president, we just knew it was time to get to work, right? Like there's always those kind of quotes of like, they were the center of the universe. The first person that I ran into after we started to know things were going bad was the candidate. The candidate put their arm on my shoulder and said, don't worry, keep your head up, blah, blah. Like none of that. None of that. It was all just, we ran this science experiment. It was never going to work. Nobody should have expected it to work. And we did an amazing job. The end of the story.
And everyone lived happily ever after with Trump back in the White House.
Yes.
Do you think that's because that senior team especially was just inherited from Biden, that if she had more loyalists in there, if she had that sort of apparatus, that we would be getting more of the sympathetic post election Kamala look? Or is it just because these are all people who are hired guns, basically, who got drafted onto Kamala, that we're not getting that sort of sympathetic look?
My guess, right, and this is just only from reading it from the outside, is that campaign was such crazy pants, like just launching a plane and then you're halfway, over the Atlantic Ocean, and somebody's like, wow, this is crazy. This is happening without an engine. And you're like, wait, what? like, I don't know how this is even working to this extent, but it is surely doomed between now and when we get there. And yet they had that adrenaline coming out of the change. And
well, again, they only had 107 days. Let's make sure we note that in here.
Exactly. They had 107 days. And, all of a sudden, Kamala Harris's approval ratings are like George W. Bush after 9/11, where she just has this 40-point swing, where people love her now. And I think that they were just like, well, we don't know how it's working or why it's working, but it is apparently working, and we're going to take credit for it. And then it just doesn't. I don't know. My guess is that it's a lot of adrenaline, and also nobody really wanted to take ownership of it. Like, there's a reason why that was a 4-person interview and not a 1-person interview. It wasn't just Jen O'Malley Dillon. It wasn't just David Plouffe. So Jen O'Malley Dillon runs a disastrous campaign. You lost before Election Day in a general, which is impossible to do.
Yes.
Your candidate had to leave the race because
you were on your way to an historic wipeout, not just for him, but the whole party.
The whole party. And you keep your job, but then they're like, no, we're also going to bring in David Plouffe, the Obama guy. Okay. So not only does she not get fired, you bring in an old guard guy. You don't bring somebody up the bench like Quentin Fulks, who I think of those 4 was the only one that was, I don't know. He was the only one that sounded like hireable in the next cycle to me.
And sounded a little bit more introspective about what happened instead of retrospective, I guess.
Exactly. Because I think he's going to be one of the only people that's going to have to go to donors next cycle and be like, okay, here's the chart. Here's what we knew. Here's what we didn't know. Because that's the other thing for the Democratic Party is like, yeah, they raised between the party and the campaign and the PACs close to $4 billion. I think it wound up coming to $4 billion. And then the way they're talking on the podcast, it's like, well, hey, we got it close. We didn't really ever think that we had a shot. We were really excited. And it's
that's what galls me is that
yeah,
they admit that like we never really believed that we could get it over. We got the race within a dead heat. We never had her winning. We never had Trump down. We knew going into election night that we had to have a lot of stuff break our way and everything. Like, you imagine for a second if, again, we're both Steeler fans here.
Yes.
If Mike Tomlin gave an interview like that, where he talked about how, we just wanted to come in here and be competitive. We don't come in here and give them a good game or anything like that. Do you not think that the Rooneys would call him into a meeting the next day? Or that the crazy Steeler fans out there wouldn't hold him accountable? Like, if a coach gave a post-game interview like they did, and they had all the advantages, you would bet that would lead every single talk show the next morning.
Yes.
And it's just it's astounding the level of failing up.
Is like, that's a conversation that like 14 people in America, Reid Hoffman, Moskowitz, Alex Soros, these are the people that pump for real money into this, that made up the lion's share of that $4 billion that came in. They are the people that are going to have real conversations about, like, wait a minute, what were you telling me? What were you telling me that made me cut that multi-million-dollar check, that maybe write that multi-million-dollar check toward the end of this? You're telling me that you didn't have a shot, that we were because I'm sure that's not what they told them to get them to write the money.
Not a chance. Well, and if you're speaking to those big ticket donors the same way you talk on your email chains or one of the seemingly never ending text messages, fundraising text messages that they send out, where we're in a dead heat right now, we desperately need money, then what are you doing?
Well, or still getting. I'm still getting.
I'm still getting the Harris text messages.
Like, what? That at a certain point, it's like, is this money laundering? Like, what is going on right now?
That's one of the things they didn't say.
I'm still getting these things.
Well, that's one of the things that I wish they addressed in that interview as well. Is what's the current financial situation of the campaign here? Because you had all those reports about how they were so much in debt. You had blind quotes acknowledging that there was some debt. We don't know how much. So I guess, how do you burn through $1.5 billion plus, end out in the red here, and then still have the gall to go ask these small dollar donors who funded the lion's share of your campaign, that you apparently never had a real shot at getting across the finish line? I just don't understand it. And maybe that's why I'm not in politics, I'm in political media, but I just don't get it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, fledgling though we might be, our operations are still in the black. So there's...
Well, it's the aggressive text message campaign that you're running right now, asking me just chip in $5.
Just $5 to me,
just
personally.
$5.
Yeah.
Here's my Venmo.
Here's my Venmo. Just give me $5 right now. All right, here on the way out the door, let's do a little bit of Steelers talk, because it is a very exciting time to be a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. You mentioned, would I be shocked if we were in the highest scoring game of the year? I will tell you this, Kirk. I have had high optimistic hopes for this offense for years. Just waiting for a game like I saw yesterday, where all of the people that I know are above average at their positions actually played like it on the same game, because we have never seen that. Like, not since Ben Roethlisberger got old have we seen a
not
Pittsburgh
since the
Steelers
three
team do
Bs.
that. Yeah, the Killer Bees. That was... And finally, it was like, oh, wow, boom, about 70 yards to Freiermuth. We got a touchdown and 70 yards to our number one wide receiver. Both of our running backs got active, not only in the running game, but in the pass game. Had no problem moving the ball. That's never been a problem with talent on that team. They've assembled a lot of really good talent, to the point where, Kirk, I'm now starting to get worried about our salary cap next year, because as the GM, Omar Khan has been great about drafting. I was so excited for a third rounder to strip sack
That did my heart so well. That was
and
great.
then a fourth rounder to scoop it in and run it into the end zone.
That was great.
But we were a little lean in terms of re-signing people like Najee Harris. So I wonder whether or not he wants to replace him on the cheap. But still, that being said, oh my God, I am over the moon. I think we're going to destroy the Browns next week, and at that point, it is in our final little death march of Eagles, Chiefs, and then Ravens before I think we end with the Bengals, right?
We do end with the Bengals, and that's what concerns me is that I think we are going to punch the Browns in the mouth on Sunday. I think that's going to be a very classic revenge game where I don't think that we're going to make the same mistakes that we did in the snow game on Thursday. Yeah. And I'm with you. I am absolutely optimistic. It wasn't ever a talent question, maybe except at the quarterback position for the Steelers these last few years. But I've just been so crushed by the wasted talent and potential that we've had game after game, season after season, for even going back to the last few years of Ben, that to see it all click was kind of like the parting of the Red Sea there, and just it was absolutely glorious. And I'm really excited for Sunday. I think that's going to be great. I am nervous as hell, though, about that death march here. Not only do we have the Eagles on the 21st, 4 days later we got to turn around and play the Chiefs, which might have some real implications for how the conference shakes out. Yeah. I mean, that is just not setting us up for success here, especially with how gassed we were coming out of the Ravens game going into Thursday against the Browns.
But if not for the snow, I think we win that game.
I think you're right. But we just come out of those games just so bruised, and especially playing against the Ravens. And then we end it with, then at the end of the Chiefs, our reward is playing the Ravens. Now we get to maybe beat up on the Bengals in the last week and let everybody rest. But I'm not necessarily optimistic. I'm very optimistic about how we're going to finish in the division. But that 3-game stretch there is going to be tough.
Yeah, I'm going to give a controversial take here. I think the Eagles, and this is going to be weird to say because they just beat them, I think the Eagles are kind of a worse version of the Ravens team, and it's a Ravens team that this entire offense-wise, that the entire Pittsburgh team is built to beat the Ravens in the same way that the Ravens theoretically should be built to beat the Steelers. Right. But I think, the Ravens wound up building themselves to beat the Chiefs, which they weren't able to do. But, the Steelers are built to beat the Ravens. And so it's like, what do you have? An explosive running back that needs to be kept in check no matter what. Mm-hmm. You've got one deep threat that's a real major problem, and you have a running quarterback that you need to keep in the pocket and force them into making decisions because they can be self-destructive when they are forced into kind of extended plays. That's kind of what the defense is built to do. The only difference is that I think that the Steelers' offense can draw this into a rock fight, and if it's a rock fight, I like the Steelers' chances over anybody. I don't think there's anybody in the league I think that are better than the Steelers there, just simply because of Chris Boswell, and I trust the veteran quarterback in these kinds of games where you just need to make one little play to get a first down that ends the game.
No, if it's a classic AFC North style game, I love our odds in that. I love it we've had 2 games this year where we've won without scoring a touchdown. That's great. I love that. That's awesome. But if we are doing an arms race, if we got into a shootout like we did this weekend with the Bengals against the Eagles, that's what gets me nervous. Because I'm really happy that our offense finally won us a game. But those penalties on Joey Porter Jr., they scare me. Saquon Barkley, he scares me. And having the mobile threat of Hurts, that scares me as well. But if we can contain that and it becomes a rot fight like what you're saying, I do like our odds. Because I think that's, 2 rot fights in a row are going to be tough.
Well, the other things are, I think that Lamar is better than Hurts, and I think that Harbaugh is a better coach than Sirianni.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. Lamar made worse decisions, though, than Hurts.
Yeah, but he also makes better throws. So it's
Yeah,
and for whatever reason, we've just mind controlled him. He just does not play like Lamar Jackson when he plays against the Steelers. It's one of the craziest things.
It's one of the one of the big joys in my life is watching us completely confound him and everything, and just hearing all this MVP talk and everything, and then the second he gets out and plays the Steelers, he just completely forgets how to play. It's great.
Gotcha. All right. It makes me so happy as well. Almost as happy as it makes me to have Kirk Bato on the show. Thank you so much for coming on short notice to talk about all this. Where can people find you?
Justin, thank you for having me. As always, love having a Victory Monday here with you after a big Steeler win. You can find me on Twitter at Kirk_Bato. We're also now on Blue Sky as well. Not only myself at Kirk Bato, but National Journal is on there as well. So follow us at National Journal on Twitter and Blue Sky, and check us out at nationaljournal.com.
Boom. Thanks, man.
Thank you, sir.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, brought to you by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. You want to send us an email, it is theyoungamerican@gmail.com. You can find, follow, and share video clips of the show, Justin R. Young, on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. YouTube is Politics. Support us with a one-time donation. PayPal.me/PayJury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash. You can send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post office box, easy for me to say, 153184, Austin, Texas, 78715. Of course, the only place you get our bonus content is TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each week, either $3 a week or $99 for the entire year. Over 150 episodes of PX30 for under $100. That's a good deal. And a reminder, if you're getting anything, if you're getting one as a gift, if you're already a subscriber, you're getting one as a gift for your friends, relatives, or loved ones, well, I'll make a little cameo just to welcome them into the family. You can give me specific information, because I know, look, it's hard to break those podcasting habits. You know, you have the podcast that you listen to. Just tell me the stuff that they've normally listened to. I'll make a little video and say, hey, my name is Justin Robert Young. I'm doing this show. Somebody that you love that's really, really cool bought you this gift. Thank you. I welcome you into the tent. While we're here, I'll explain this is how the show is like. This is what it's not like. Blah, blah, blah. It'll be fun. I hope somebody does this, because I'm excited to do it. But our founding tier, get your name read at the end of the podcast like these fine folks. Let me tell you this. If I'll make a cameo to somebody who does a $99 gift, I will send you a physical wrapped present if you buy a gift for somebody to be on the founding tier, including these fine folks. L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Checkers, Gloria, my mom, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley Steven, and Zombie Doc. You want your name read. You want somebody else's name read, and you're going to be the psychopath that buys it for them as a gift? Well, one place to go, TakePoliticsSeriously.com. I'm going to do a rundown of the Pod Save America interview, because I do believe that it's important for us to memorialize something like that. We will also have the one and only Edinger Mentum back on the show on Friday, and we have a look at where the pro-choice movement is after everything that happened in November. But till next time, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics, but this is the only one that dares discuss. Oh, 3.